Metabo 6-inch cordless Random Orbital Sander. We've seen lots of cordless 5-inch Random Orbital Sanders from the tool industry, but we haven't seen a lot of 6-inch diameter cordless Random Orbital Sanders, and that's what we have here from Metabo. This runs on their 18-volt platform. Let's dive in and take a closer look, and then we'll use it, and then we'll come back and talk about pricing and warranty. So let's get out this new Metabo sander. We haven't really seen this kitted, but we've got a few batteries in here to use. So we'll get out the sander. This is the SXA 18 LTX 150BL. Long model number there. Anyway, we've got a couple of different batteries in here we'll use. Dust bag and small 2 amp hour battery. And then we've got some different sanding discs we're going to use. So this is the Metabo 6-inch brushless sander. Now there are a lot of cordless sanders on the market, especially from the tool brands. However, most of them are in the 5-inch version or smaller. We have not seen many that have come out with a 6-inch version. Most of those are either pneumatic or actually plug-in power. 6-inch is used a lot in the automotive industry, and then obviously a lot of painters, things like that, when they're maybe removing paint from homes and things of that nature. But again, rarely do you see a 6-inch battery-powered Random Orbital Sander. So we're excited to use this simple on-off switch here on the front of the unit. This skirt here on the front will show you that that is removable, so you don't have to use that. Obviously, that'll guard against you hitting up against a wall or something like that, so the sandpaper is actually not hitting that. But then you can remove that if you're, wanting to work a panel on a car or a large wooden surface, something like that. We get a dust port here on the back. I believe that's a 1-inch external, maybe 1 1/8, but we'll measure that here in a few moments. But it is a brushless powered tool, or a brushless motor tool powered by their 18-volt batteries. And we get a speed dial here where we can dial it from 0 to 12, so 12 different power modes or speed modes. Now there's really not a designated number of rotations for each one of those, but it does go from anywhere from 4,000 all the way up to 10,000 RPM. Now, as I mentioned, it is a 6-inch disc or a 6-inch pad, or really it's a little bit shorter than that, but 150 millimeters. So that's why you see in the model number the 150, that's the designation for the diameter of 150 millimeters, which is just about 6 inches. The oscillations, because it is a random orbital, so in addition to spinning, it's also orbiting. The orbits is anywhere from 8,000 to 20,000 orbits per minute, and it is an 1/8 orbit or 3 millimeters. So basically the little small rotation, that's going to be a small 1/8 rotation or 1/8 orbit or 3 millimeters, which is pretty small. When you look at pneumatic sanders, that would be kind of probably the finest. Usually goes kind of 3, 6, 9. 9 would be the largest orbit or the most aggressive. So it's definitely on the least aggressive. So it'd be great for really fine sanding if you're really wanting to put a polish on something. Now we do get a dust bag that will attach here. And by the way, there's a big spring in here that's going to keep that nice and open and keep that free of it just gumming up. So that will help. And then this is just going to slide on here as you want to, or we can hook up a dust extractor or vacuum to pull dust away from the tool. We're going to try both and see how well it does. You see the perforations here in the pad itself, and we're going to use some sandpaper accordingly as well to be able to, again, extract as much dust as we can. So we'll see how well does the actual tool do it, and then we'll actually see by hooking up a dust extractor and seeing how well it does. So here on this guard, all you have to do is pull it away here on one side, and it just locks in with these 2 little hooks or teeth here on either end of this. So easy to pull that away if you need to. So then again, you get the full circumference of that pad to be sanding wherever you need to without that guard being in the way. As I mentioned, a little short, about 1/8 inch short of 6 inches on the actual pad itself. And we do get a hook and loop pad. So any of your hook and loop paper is going to work fine. It comes with one sheet of 120 grit. We're really not going to use the sandpaper they're giving us. We're going to use Janka sandpaper so that basically you get flow through the entire pad, so that makes it a lot easier. And we're going to start with some heavy grit and then work up to some fine grit as well. So we're going to do a project that hopefully we can kind of show that whole process and see how well it does. We're also going to start with a 2 amp hour battery. You can see here with a 2 amp hour, that's got a nice slim profile. It's not much in the way, it's not too heavy. And by the way, we'll weigh this here in a second as well. So again, with that 2 amp hour, that's really a great slim profile that makes that a nice and balanced tool. However, not sure how much runtime we're going to get out of such a small battery. It might impress us, but we will see, because that sander is doing some work for sure. And if you put the large, 5.5 amp hour battery on here, it's going to make it pretty tail heavy. It will work, and it kind of stays out of your way, but it is a little tail heavy there, as you can see. So if you are using that larger battery, there is going to be a difference in feel on that tool. So with the 5 amp hour battery, 5 pounds, 1 ounce. And with the 2 amp hour battery, 3 pounds. So about 1.25 pounds lighter with the 2 amp hour battery on there. So still really not a heavy tool. And in fact, when you're sanding, that additional weight on that bigger battery can definitely help. It's just whether or not you want that offset of kind of it feeling tail heavy, which again, you're typically putting a little pressure on your palm anyway to offset any tail heaviness, but you just will notice that there's some weight there on the backside if you're using a larger battery. Overall, the tool height is still under 6 inches, about 5.5 inches to the top of the tool. And again, the pad's the biggest thing at like 6 inches, and you got a little tail section sticking out. So overall, about a 9-inch tool from the front to the back, if you will, with that 2 amp hour battery. So what we have in front of us is a piece of, I believe it's 8/4 Purpleheart, and Purpleheart has a Janka or hardness rating of 1860, which is probably one of the hardest of the common hardwoods, or the more common hardwoods. And Purpleheart's even sometimes hard to get, but typically you can get it at most of your wood shops. And again, there are harder woods, but of anything that's kind of common, this is probably the hardest of them, again, at the Janka rating of 1860. And one thing interesting here, you see it's got a nice purple hue to it, and then it's brownish up here. The more the sunlight gets to it, it will actually start turning to more of a brown, but sometimes you can get that purple back. Really cool wood. Anyway, this is very rough hewn wood, so as it came out of the mill, it's not been touched, so very rough up here. So we're going to start with some 60 grit with the Metabo. So we've got the Metabo, and as I mentioned, some Janka Abernet P60 or 60 grit. And with it being pretty much see-through, so you can see that it actually pulls through anywhere. We don't have to line up holes or anything like that, so it makes it very nice when you're sanding to be able to extract the dust through there. And at first, we're just going to use the dust bag to see how well that works. And the dust bag fits on there pretty well. Just got a little rubber lip there, just slides on, hooks into place. And by the way, it is oval. It's kind of got an oval shape, so your flatter spot towards the battery gives you a little more room there. And I do have a full 2 amp hour 18 volt battery. Now we are going to start, we're going to put this, let's just put it in the middle here. We'll put it on, say, 6 out of 12. And then we'll turn this on and we'll get to work. Be honest, it's very smooth. You hear a little vibration in it, but I honestly hear more than I'm actually feeling in my hand. Doesn't feel like it's doing a lot of work, to be honest. I may bump up the RPM in just one moment, but I'm going to leave it here on 6 and kind of make a full pass. So very hard wood, and again, these deep gouges here, even for 60 grit, it's going to be a little rough getting these out, but we're going to stay at it. And I'm going to bump that up to, let's go to 8. Very smooth sander. Yes, you are feeling some vibrations in there. Also, I'm pretty impressed with the amount of dust that we're picking up. We have some residual that's floating around, but really not a lot collecting, not as much as I thought there would be. And again, this is just off of the extraction from the sander itself. Yeah, we're definitely picking it up, as you can see there in the dust port. So since this is so hard, and since we do have some pretty deep grooves, I'm actually going to pull off our 60. We're going to go to a 40 grit. Pretty aggressive. And I know typically we'd run this under a planer to get this out, but we're testing the sander, right? Bump it up to 10. And typically with a sander, a lot of times they want to kind of walk on you, and this is pretty easy to control because it's got plenty of power. It doesn't let just the tool grab, it's actually doing the work. Okay, I'm sure we sped things up for you so you're not watching those full passes in real time. As far as the sander goes, it's just doing a great job powering through everything, and very smooth as well, and plenty of power even to turn that 6-inch disc. I was scared that, you know, maybe with the 5-inch it might be the same sander, but again, no problems whatsoever of being able to turn that 6-inch 40 grit disc. And I only have it in 10. I don't even have it in 12 yet. Curious on our battery. Yeah, it looks like we've used up half of our battery and we're not off our 40 grit yet. Now I am curious at how much stuff we're actually collecting. That's not bad. That's a good amount. A good amount of dust. From just sanding on our first couple of passes. Okay, now we're going to hook up our dust extractor to the unit, and then let's do some more sanding and see how we do. Looks like our paper's still good. You can see now everything is staying really nice and clean. So we have no residual falling out, very little, if at all, and everything is being contained in the dust extractor being pulled out. Our deep grooves are still in here, and I believe it's not going to come out even with 40 grit just because of how deep they are. We've definitely made good progress elsewhere, just these deep grooves are not coming out. And again, we would have first hit this with a planer before we ever started sanding anyway, but we want to just see how well this would work on this harder Purpleheart. Just one cell left on our battery. Okay, I think our battery's finally going on the 2 amp hour, so still pretty impressive the amount of passes that we made off of this little battery, and still have a cell left, but we can tell the RPM are dropping. So we're going to go to the larger 5.5 amp hour battery. Again, a little larger, not too big of a deal. This little Metabo is a very impressive sander. Again, plenty of power to turn even the 6-inch with the 40 grit and to be able to do the sanding here on this very hard wood. Now, we're going to continue to go ahead and try to polish this out or level this out to make it look really nice, but we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If you want to finish kind of watching this, then we'll tag it on here at the end and probably speed it up a bit. But just to show you how pretty this Purpleheart can turn out. So you'll notice here that we're getting higher in the grit, even though we're still at 80 grit, which is a pretty aggressive pad. But you'll notice now that the pad itself is actually rotating more. Not just orbiting or oscillating, but actually the pad is rotating. Let me show you. So in addition to the orbit, the pad's also going round and round. With the 40 grit, you won't notice that as much. The more aggressive it is, the tougher it is to actually rotate, because the mechanical process in there is actually making it orbit, and then the rotations are just happening off of that orbit. So the actual rotations are not a mechanical, in other words, it's not a forced rotation. But the higher you get in the grits, you do want to see more rotation, because that's going to give you a smoother surface. Not that important at the 40 and 60 grit, because that's just, you're trying to hog out material, and that's fine if it's just doing orbits. But the more you get into a polished stage, into the higher grits, especially in that 220-400, the more you want to have rotations along with that orbit. Very good work from the Metabo. Plenty of power doing that job, and with the 5.5 amp hour, looks like we're about used that one up too. But again, we've gone from 40 grit to 60 to 80 to 120 to 220 and even 320, but being very aggressive on that 40, cutting this down that we should have done with a planer first. So now you can see with just a little bit of beeswax on it, really turns a different shade. But you can also see the sides here where you really see the purple coming out. The brown is more where the sun has had a chance to kind of react with it, if you will, and it will start to turn more of a brown. But that reds will kind of come out once you compare it to something, but got a really good looking hue to it. One thing nice about a battery powered sander is it sits up very nice on the battery. The Metabo did a great job on this Purpleheart, even though it was very hard. For the most part, it leveled everything out except those original milling grooves that should have been taken out with a planer. But again, we tried to get really aggressive with the sander. And let's face it, with a couple more sheets of 40 grit, maybe another battery, we probably could have gotten that out. And then, of course, the rest of the process of the 60, 80, 120, 220, and 320 would have leveled all that out, and you wouldn't see those few stripes in there. So we weren't out to get the best finish possible. We were just out to actually test and review the sander, and it did a great job on that. We did go through a 2 amp hour battery and most of the 5.5 amp hour battery as well. But again, getting very aggressive on this wood. Typically, you're just hitting it maybe at an 80 stage, then a 120, and then a 220. But we took it on further to 320 and backed all the way down to 40 grit, trying to get out those rough mill markings from its original cut. Now, price on this is $230 for the bare tool. We have not seen it kitted with any batteries or chargers. So basically you get the box and the sander, and I think one sheet of 120 grit for $230. And if you register the tool within 4 weeks, you get a 3-year warranty on the tool and any batteries you purchase as well. So check it out. We'll have a link in the description. Also, keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even TikTok. And if you don't mind, would you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already? And by all means, if you hated our video, well, then give us a thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.